Brandon, I want to ask you, our colleague Jason Reed, who's often on the show, wrote a column in Monday's paper basically urging the fans of Washington to start paying attention to this team. They're on the bottom half of attendance. They're only slightly up from where they were last year when they had a much worse record and not anywhere near the playoffs. Why aren't people paying attention, Brandon?
It's interesting because, I mean, it's been 6 years since they were in this position. Kind of reading comments, looking at what people say and talking to people, it seems like they just want the Wizards to prove that they belong in that conversation of being a contender. Because, like, the buildup of last week's game against Charlotte when they were jockeying for that playoff position, it was like no buzz. Like, all the players were saying, oh, this is a playoff game. Nobody really seemed to care. But then the Wizards go out there and they lay an egg. They come out lethargic. They have to scramble back, and they make it a close game, but they lost. So it's kind of like feeding into that narrative, like same old Wizards. They hype it up, but they're not ready for that. So I think that's one factor, along with the fact, you know, before you had a Gilbert Arenas, who was a big character with the hibachi and 50-point games. Like, John Wall's a very good player, but he doesn't draw that same type of attention to make, like, the city and even the nation kind of pay attention. Because for as good as the Wizards were, or I should better they were this year, they were never on national TV. Like, it's not really a buzz that can flow from the nation to the local part and say, okay, this is why you should pay attention to them. So, I mean, maybe if they make, a little noise in the playoffs, that could change, but I think people need to see something before they do that.
LeVar, why no button?
I think that's what it certainly comes down to, is that it's a city that's gotten used to its teams coming up short. And the best way to, I gave the analogy, would you be more excited if you knew you were getting $500,000 tomorrow, or if you woke up tomorrow and you found out you were receiving $500,000? I think we would all say you'd be happy both ways, but you'd be more excited if you woke up and you unexpectedly found out you were receiving $500,000. So, and I use that point to say this basketball team is not yet established being a contender. This basketball team should not be talked about in the same vein as a Miami Heat or Indiana Pacers. As a matter of fact, the Indiana Pacers shouldn't be talked about in the same vein as the Miami Heat. The only champion and the only contender is a champion in Miami and a contender in Indiana, if you ask me. Now, I don't want, as a Washington Wizard, to be placed in that category when I've done nothing to prove that that's where we belong. That's unnecessary stress, pressure, and expectation. So nobody expects anything. I think it's a good thing, to be honest with you. Fly under the radar. You have a golden opportunity to have people who expect absolutely nothing out of you. They looked at a weak East, like, oh, the East is weak. That's why these poor teams are able to make a move, and they cite the Wizards as one of those teams. They make it in, make some noise in the playoffs. And if you make some noise in the playoffs, I think you create that momentum and that attention, and say, oh, they're for real.
It's
I don't think anybody acknowledges that this team is for real just yet.
Over the last couple of years, the last year, we had the curse of high expectations that we talked about with the Nationals and the Redskins last year, and how they suffered underneath them, and the Caps to a lesser degree. And the Wizards are almost on the other side of that. They're very low expectations. Here they are in the playoffs, and hey, this is a team that you can get behind, you can root for, right, Adam? How come people aren't showing up?
I mean, I think they're fun to watch. It's interesting that, like, every night in DC you can turn on a basketball game and it'll probably be competitive, and you have a tremendous athlete like John Wall, and Beal has an elite skill, so they're a fun team to watch for sure. But it's almost like, if you have in the NBA, especially this year in the Eastern Conference, if you have three top three picks in the past 5 years, you're making the playoffs by default, basically. Like, you have to really screw up to not make the playoffs. So I think there's still probably a lack of trust among the fan base.
Sure.
That the people who made the decisions when they extended Gilbert Arenas, and when, like, the franchise was like a laughing stock,
all those
same people making decisions are still there.
Yep.
So it's hard to sort of get behind this, like, new sort of spirit and, like, new team when it's not a new team. It's the same, or it's new. They're new players, obviously, but the same kind of regime of management. So
interesting.
I would say that it doesn't feel like there's that much new about this team. They're winning more, but is their level of, like, play that much better? It's definitely a lot better, but it's not like, is there, like, a new direction the team's going in? Probably not. They're just a little bit better, and their conference is terrible.